The world woke up to something it never expected. Explosions lit up the skies over Tehran in the middle of the night. Within days, the most powerful leader on earth was urgently picking up the phone, dialing straight to Moscow. What is truly happening right now? What does it mean for you, for the Middle East, and for the entire world? Stay with us, because this story is unlike anything we have seen in decades. On the morning of February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a massive coordinated military campaign against Iran. In just the first 12 hours alone, nearly 900 strikes were carried out against Iranian targets across multiple cities. The operation was codenamed Operation Epic Fury by the United States military. Israel called its side of the campaign Operation Roaring Lion. The opening phase focused on decapitating senior Iranian leadership while destroying missile launch systems, air defenses, and the remnants of Iran's nuclear program. The timing of the initial strike was deliberately planned around the ability to locate and target Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, before he could go into hiding. Khamenei was killed in the very first wave of strikes, along with dozens of other senior Iranian officials. His death ended a 36-year iron grip over one of the most powerful regimes in the world. President Trump announced the attacks at 2 a.m. in a post on social media, without a live address to the public or a formal briefing to Congress. The 8-minute video message ended with Trump telling the Iranian people directly that their hour of freedom had arrived. But the first day also brought devastating tragedy that shocked the world. A missile struck a girls' school adjacent to a naval base in Minab, near Bandar Abbas, killing more than 160 people. Iranian state media reported 180 people dead and 95 wounded in that single strike, with thousands attending the burial of the victims. Israel denied involvement in the school strike, and the United States said it would investigate whether its forces were responsible. By March 3rd, the Red Crescent confirmed that over 600 civilians had been killed since the strikes began. By the 7th day of the conflict, that number had climbed to at least 1,332 people killed inside Iran. The strikes caused damage not only to military sites, but also to schools, hospitals, the Grand Bazaar in Tehran, and the historic Golestan Palace. Tehran's residents had no citywide shelter system and no warning sirens to protect them from incoming missiles. Many were left taping their windows and hiding in interior rooms, hoping the walls would hold. Iran did not sit still. Within hours of the first strikes, Iran launched its retaliatory campaign designated Operation True Promise for targeting Israel, U.S. military bases, and multiple Gulf nations simultaneously. In the first 24 hours, Iran fired roughly 420 missiles across 9 countries and at ships at sea. Ballistic missiles struck the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar and the Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait. A drone hit a radar installation at the U.S. Naval Support Activity in Bahrain, home to the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet. Dubai International Airport, one of the world's busiest, was damaged by drone strikes and was forced to temporarily halt all flights. Drone debris caused fires at the Burj Al Arab Hotel, one of the most famous luxury hotels on Earth. The United States Embassy in Kuwait was struck by an Iranian missile and was subsequently closed indefinitely. Saudi Arabia and the UAE previously committed only to intercepting Iranian salvos. Both issued statements signaling willingness to respond directly to further attacks. The entire Gulf region was on fire, literally and figuratively. The scale of this war was unlike anything seen in the modern Middle East. Estimates from a leading strategic research institution put the cost of the first 100 hours of Operation Epic Fury at $3.7 billion, approximately $891 million per day. The vast majority of those costs had not been budgeted for in advance. The Israeli military claimed to have achieved near-complete air superiority, reporting it had carried out 2,500 strikes and destroyed 80% of Iran's air defense systems. Trump declared that Iran was being demolished ahead of schedule, claiming the country had lost its air force, its air defense, and its radar. Shortly after a key call with Moscow, Trump announced the war in Iran was very complete saying Tehran had no navy, no communications, and no air force left. The U.S. reported that Iran's ballistic missile attacks had fallen by 90% since the very first day of the conflict. Drone attacks from Iran had also dropped by 83% over the same period. But Iran made clear it was not done fighting. The conflict did not stay within the borders of the Middle East. On March 4th, a U.S. military submarine struck and sank Iran's most modern warship, the Iris Dina, approximately 40 nautical miles off the southern coast of Sri Lanka. The vessel had 180 crew members aboard and sent out a distress call before sinking into the Indian Ocean. Sri Lankan naval and air forces launched a search and rescue operation, evacuating 32 critically wounded sailors to a hospital. Over 100 crew members remained missing after the sinking, the most geographically distant offensive action yet taken under Operation Epic Fury. This was no longer just a Middle Eastern conflict. It had become a global war, stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean. Back in Lebanon, the war was spreading on a second front. Hezbollah entered the conflict, firing rockets and missiles at northern Israel and forcing Israeli strikes to expand into Beirut and southern Lebanon. Israel bombed the building where Iran's Assembly of Experts was meeting to elect a new supreme leader, delaying the succession process. Under Iran's constitution, an interim leadership council was established on March 1st to exercise the functions of head of state. On March 8th, Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the assassinated supreme leader, was elected to replace his father. Trump made clear he was not happy with this choice, refusing to elaborate on what the United States intended to do about it. Iran's Revolutionary Guard issued a defiant statement, saying it would be Iran, not the United States, that determined how and when this war would end. Iran's foreign minister warned publicly that his country was fully prepared to continue striking with missiles for as long as it took. The world was feeling the economic shockwaves. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted by more than 1,000 points, a 2.2% drop as oil prices surged because of the war. Shipping lines rerouted their vessels to avoid the Strait of Hormuz even before Iran formally threatened to fire on any ship passing through. Flights in and out of the Middle East came to a near-complete stop, stranding residents, expatriates, and tourists across the region. The U.S. State Department reported that approximately 20,000 Americans had already left the Middle East, with government charter flights arranged for those still trying to evacuate. Governments around the world were scrambling to protect their citizens and their economies. France's President Macron began organizing a purely defensive mission involving European and non-European nations to escort oil tankers and gradually reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The global order was being reshaped in real time. Then came the phone call that the entire world was watching. On March 9, 2026, U.S. President Donald Trump personally called Russian President Vladimir Putin their first direct conversation since December of 2025. The call was made at Washington's request and lasted approximately 1 hour. Putin's foreign affairs advisor described the conversation as frank, businesslike, and constructive. Why would Trump urgently call Putin about Iran? Because Russia is one of Iran's closest and most powerful allies, and the United States was facing a problem that bombs alone could not solve. White House envoy Steve Witkoff had already communicated to Russian officials that they must not share intelligence with Iran during the conflict. During the call, Putin outlined several ideas for achieving a quick political and diplomatic settlement to the conflict. Drawing on his recent conversations with Gulf leaders and Iran's president, Trump shared his own assessment of how the military operation was progressing and what he believed the path forward looked like. Trump later told reporters he had a very good call with Putin, noting that the Russian leader wanted to be helpful, but that Trump told him he could be even more helpful by ending the war in Ukraine. Ukraine was also a major topic on that urgent call. Trump reiterated his desire to see the war in Ukraine end as quickly as possible through a negotiated ceasefire leading to a long-term settlement. Putin gave Trump a description of the current situation along the front lines, where Russian troops reported they were making significant advances. Ukrainian President Zelensky stated that his country was prepared for peace negotiations at any moment, provided the format was realistic and could lead to a genuine end to the war. However, a planned meeting between U.S. and Ukrainian officials that week had been postponed because Washington was overwhelmed by the escalating crisis in Iran. The two leaders also touched on Venezuela and the sharp spike in global oil market prices caused by the war. One phone call covering some of the most explosive crises the world had seen at the same time. The international community was deeply divided. Russia condemned the killing of Iran's supreme leader as a violation of all norms of human morality and international law. China also condemned the operation, with Beijing warning that the conflict risked spiraling completely out of control. Britain's defense secretary confirmed that the United Kingdom was conducting air defense operations to support the UAE, with Typhoon jets taking out Iranian drones over Jordan and Bahrain. The first U.S. bomber aircraft also landed at an airbase in England after the U.K. granted permission for the United States to use British bases for specific defensive operations. The Republican-led U.S. House of Representatives voted 219 to 212 against a measure that would have halted the war and required congressional authorization for further military action. The war had full political backing in Washington, but the human cost was growing by the hour. As of today, March 11, 2026, this conflict is still very much ongoing. Both sides are digging in. Iran has a new supreme leader who has pledged full resistance and continuity. The United States and Israel are pressing forward with their military objectives. Trump insists the mission is nearly complete, while Iran's military insists the final word belongs to Tehran, not Washington. The fate of the Strait of Hormuz, the global oil supply, and the stability of the entire Middle East now hangs in the balance. A single phone call between Washington and Moscow has shown the world that even the most powerful military on Earth knows it cannot finish this alone. The next few weeks will determine whether diplomacy can succeed where bombs have only deepened the wounds. And the whole world, whether it wants to be or not, is watching every move. This is one of the most significant and fast-moving stories of our lifetime. Every single day brings new developments, new dangers, and new negotiations happening behind closed doors. If you want to stay informed with clear, accurate, and up-to-date coverage, please hit that subscribe button right now. Your support is what keeps this channel going and allows us to bring you the stories that truly matter. Thank you so much for watching today. Stay safe, stay informed, and we will see you in the very next one.